very first case of the coronavirus was January the 21st, 2020. In our lesson this morning, we talked about some facts we learned very early on from the virus. We learned that it was highly contagious. We learned that it could be severe, bringing individuals into hospital situations. We also found that it was deadly in nature for many individuals, especially those over the age of 70 and those with pre-existing conditions. We also noted that that virus changed our lives drastically, and it continues to change our lives even today. All of 2020 was focused on coronavirus, and we continue even to this day talking about coronavirus. Coronavirus this, coronavirus that, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. It's constant. We noted this morning that hindsight is 20/20. It's always easier to look back on something and understand it and see what you should have done than it is at times to see it coming at you and try to make decisions at that particular time. The subtitle of our lesson is this: what was your concern in 2020? We're now several months into 2021. We have the ability to stop and look back upon our lives and how we lived them and how we reacted and decisions that we made back in 2020, and we need to do that from time to time. We're taking this particular topic and we are applying it to various aspects of our lives. We did 4 of them in our lesson this morning. What was your concern in 2020? God or self? Was your concern faith or fear? Was your concern worship or worry? Was your concern spiritual life or physical life? We're going to continue our study in this particular lesson of this same idea. What was our concern in 2020? Point number 1. Was our concern in 2020 the great physician, or was our concern human doctors? Folks, I believe that we are extremely blessed in our day and our age with individuals who have learned science, haven't they? They know the human body, and they know about medications. They know how the human body works. They know the things that harm the human body, and they also know how to heal the human body through many, many means. I believe that it is right to listen to medical professionals. It is right to follow the advice of medical professionals. Those individuals, when they become a professional, take an oath of their position, don't they? You see, their desire is to keep us well, to get us well, and to enable us to live just as long a life as we possibly can. But we must also remember that there is a being in our world who is known as the great physician. Jesus went to a man by the name of Matthew's house. Matthew was a publican, a tax collector of the time. When Jesus gets there, a lot more publicans and many more sinners enter into the home of this particular man, and Jesus receives those individuals. Jesus talks to them. He is conversing with them. He's eating with them. And the Pharisees, of course, see what Jesus is doing, and what do? They immediately begin to question His actions. Why is He eating with those sinners? Why in the world would He be offering any fellowship whatsoever to those publicans? Doesn't He know who they are? Doesn't He know what kind of people they are? Aren't we supposed to be holy? Those individuals are going to corrupt Him if He's not careful. On and on they went with their criticism of the Christ. Jesus, on this occasion, responded with a very, very interesting statement in Matthew 9:12. But when He heard it, He said unto them, They that are whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. I find it interesting that by the process of inference, we learn that Jesus is the great physician. Jesus says, the reason that I'm in the house of this publican is because I am here to do what? I am here to heal sinners. And I am the one who can do that. I am the doctor who has the medication, who has the prescription that I can give them that can heal their soul. Folks, there is a great physician that exists in our world. Did you know that Jesus could also be considered a physical physician? He doesn't have a degree. He didn't go to medical school. Folks, He didn't have to. He created the human body. Did He not? If there is anybody who knows about the body, it is Jesus. He is the one who formed it, fashioned it, put it together. He knows it inside and out. When He was here on earth, the Bible tells us very plainly that He healed all that were sick. Matthew 8, verse 16. Jesus could be classified as a physical physician. If you need healing, guess what? He could do it, could He not? But my friends, His primary concern is not the physical. Our Lord's primary concern is as a spiritual healer. But He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon Him. And by His stripes, listen to Isaiah, we are healed. Folks, that is a spiritual healing, is it not? Not a physical healing. The reason Jesus died isn't to make us well physically. The reason Jesus died is to make us well spiritually. That's His main concern. Peter picked up on Isaiah's words in 1 Peter 2 verse 24, and he repeated them almost exactly the way they were written. By His stripes we are healed. Here's the point. Sometimes the prescriptions of the great physician will run contrary to the prescriptions and the advice of human doctors. It's hard to believe, isn't it? But it's true. So what we have to do is ask ourselves the question, in 2020, was I more concerned about the words and the advice and the commands of the great physician, or was I more concerned about the commands, the advice of human physicians? Point number 2. As I look back in 2020, was I more concerned about obedience to God, or was I more concerned about excuses? The second part of the whole duty of man is obedience to God. We have the wisest man on the face of the earth, Solomon, other than Jesus. Had money, had the ability and power to do an experiment about life, and he did. And he wrote a book about it, 12 chapters, the book of Ecclesiastes. He gets to the very end of that book, and here's what he says. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God, keep His commandments. Why? This is the whole duty of man. Folks, the reason that you and I are on this earth is to honor God and do His will. That's what Solomon said thousands of years ago in Ecclesiastes 12:13. When King Saul disobeyed God, a prophet by the name of Samuel likened his transgression to severe disobedience. Listen to what he tells him. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. How many of you in here have ever practiced witchcraft? Not one hand. Good for you. Any of you in here ever bought a little idol? Do you have any on your shelf at home? You go around the corner to where the idols are worshipped and enter into the idolatrous temples and worship there. Ever traveled over to Greece and gone in some of those temples and done a little idol worshiping? Raise your hand. Not a soul. Good for you. But did you hear what he just told Saul? Saul, listen to me. Rebellion against God is what? Is as the sin of witchcraft. And stubbornness can be likened unto the sins of iniquity and what? Idolatry. It's from statements like that we begin to understand that the nature of sin is horrible. And when God is judging sin, God doesn't judge sin the way we judge sin. There are not little sins and big sins. There's just what? There's just sin, isn't there? We often try to use excuses for our disregard of the Word of God. Let's go back to Samuel for a minute. Samuel was commanded by God to utterly destroy the Amalekites. He gives a lengthy description about that particular destruction. Men, women, children, oxen, asses, sheep, camel, everything. I want you to utterly destroy them. What did he do? He spared Agag, the king of the Amalekites. And the Bible says that he spared the best of the flocks and of the herds. God knows that Saul's been disobedient, and he immediately commissions Samuel to go out and meet him upon his return. And he does. And when the two men meet, I want you to listen to what Saul says. I have performed the commandment of the Lord. Wow, that's a bold statement, isn't it? Hey Samuel, what's up? Everything's wonderful. I have done exactly what God wants me to do. There was just one problem. Well, maybe two. The bleating of the sheep and the lowing of the oxen. You see, those animals have a tendency to make noise. Remember, everything was supposed to be destroyed. Nothing was to be left. And all of a sudden, Samuel is hearing what? He's hearing the bleating of the sheep in the background. He's hearing the lowing of the oxen. And so he just asked him, what meaneth then this bleating of the sheep and lowing of the oxen which I hear? If you've done everything God wants you to do, why am I hearing sheep and oxen? That's his question. It was then that Saul gave his excuse, wasn't it? They have brought them from the Amalekites. The people have spared the best of what? The sheep and of the oxen, to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. Oh man, I wish we had about an hour. That is a short verse, and it is packed with all kinds of goodies. Did you know that? I want you to look at those last two words. And the rest we have what? Utterly destroyed. You want to know what that tells me? That tells me that Saul knew the command of God. What was it that God said? Utterly destroy the Amalekites. Now Saul repeats those very words. The rest we've utterly destroyed. He knew exactly what he was supposed to do. Notice the word they and people. They have brought them from the Amalekites. They, not me, they. You see, he took himself out of this equation. And the people did what? The people spared what? The sheep and the oxen, the best of them. It's not my fault. I'm not a part of this. They did that. See, got a good excuse. I didn't do it, they did it. Now notice this next point. To sacrifice. Oh no, now we've thrown it into religious terms, haven't we? You see, you throw something into religious terms and it's wonderful. We brought these things back, not for ourselves, not to enrich ourselves, not as bounty from the war. Oh no, we brought these things back to sacrifice. See, that ought to make everything just right, right? Surely if we build an altar, surely if we offer these animals on this altar of sacrifice, it's going to be a sweet-smelling savor in the nostrils of God. You can't be against that, can you, prophet? But I want you to look at the next thing. To sacrifice to whom? Unto the Lord thy God. Now he's trying to do what? He's trying to rope Samuel into this stuff. Isn't he? We're going to sacrifice not just to any God, Samuel, we're going to sacrifice to your God. Come on, man, jump on board here. That's exactly what he wanted him to do. Now notice the last word, we. And the rest, we have utterly destroyed. Now he what? Now he includes himself in the last part of the words, doesn't he? We utterly destroyed. See, we utterly destroyed everything except what? Except what the people, not me, brought back to sacrifice to your God. Wow. That is a bold statement, isn't it? Here's what I find interesting. God didn't accept Saul's excuse. Verse 26 says this, for thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord hath rejected thee from being king over Israel. It didn't matter the purpose, didn't matter the reason, didn't matter who did it. It was disobedience unto the Almighty God. Saul, you were in charge of this, and guess what? You disobeyed, and God is going to now reject you. Folks, God doesn't tolerate excuses for disobedience to His will. Had a lot of excuses in 2020, didn't we? The pandemic and getting sick. The pandemic and dying. Oh, we can just worship at home. We'll just worship online. We had all kinds of excuses not to assemble with the saints during 2020. Folks, we need to ask ourselves seriously, did we manifest obedience to God? Or did we make excuses as to why we could not do what God desired for us to do? How about this next one? In 2020, did we please God, or were we seeking to please men? In our minds, I know that we know God is greater than men, don't we? If I were to ask any human being that, if I were to ask any Christian that especially, oh yes, God is much greater than man is. If we were to ask ourselves, should we yield to God or should we yield to the desires of man first and foremost? Every one of us would immediately say, oh, we've got to yield to God, not man. We know that here, don't we? But just because we know it doesn't make it easy to put in practice, folks. You see, man is visible. God is invisible, isn't He? Man makes His approval of us known immediately. God doesn't come down and talk to us and say, oh, you've done such a wonderful thing by doing this. We don't hear that immediately. Man will punish us immediately, will He not? He will condemn us immediately, and we feel that. God, No. He doesn't just come down immediately and punish us and condemn us, does He? Two, man can be very unforgiving. And in our minds, we know God is what? A very forgiving God. Now, folks, for those and other reasons, we often seek to please men before we please God. We have a Bible example, many in fact. Who is Aaron trying to please at the foot of Mount Sinai? You would have thought Aaron, as the brother of Moses, would have stood up for his brother, wouldn't he? And yet, rather than taking the side of Moses, taking the side of God, he yields to the masses and he himself sculpts a golden calf to be worshipped by the children of Israel. The Jewish leaders of Jesus' day. The Bible tells us that they wouldn't confess Him, even though they believed He was the Christ, the Son of God. They wouldn't confess Him. Why? Because they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. The pressure was on, wasn't it? Pilate. That one right there makes me as angry as any of them. He knew Jesus was as innocent as can be. He knew He was a just man. He knew He hadn't done anything wrong. He knows exactly what Barabbas has done. He's committed insurrection. He's committed murder in the insurrection. Which one of these two men do you want? What did the masses say? We want Barabbas. Free Barabbas. And what does He do? To keep the masses quiet, to appease them, He gives them the criminal and delivers up the innocent for crucifixion. We find too, Herod pleased the Jews, didn't he? He arrested James, the brother of John, put him to death, saw that it pleased the Jews, and he went out and arrested Peter, put him in prison, where he's going to kill him as well. You see, man loves the praise of men, oftentimes more than the praise of God. During the pandemic, we had a lot of men to please, didn't we? Need to please our government officials. Need to please the police officers. Need to please our grown children. Need to please our neighbors who are next door watching everything that we do. It's true. Folks, they watch everything. They knew whether you had a mask on before you even left the house. I don't know how. Paul makes an interesting statement in Galatians 1:10. For do I now persuade men or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I yet pleased men, I should not be the servant of Christ. It's a powerful passage, isn't it? There's two other points I'll make before we leave this one. Is this. Matthew 6:24. Folks, Jesus says no man can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. We have to make up our minds who we're going to serve. We're going to serve God, we're going to serve men. Which one? And another thing we need to remember is this. There have been many individuals who have stood up to man in order to be obedient and faithful to the Almighty God. And I've got a list there. Joseph, Moses, Elijah, Micaiah, Daniel, John the Baptist, the apostles, and even Jesus Himself. Again, and I'll emphasize to those who weren't here this morning, folks, these people and the stories behind them are not just stories that are interesting for our reading. Those stories are in the Bible so that you and I will make application of them. God wants us to be Josephs today. He wants us to be Moses today. He wants us to be the Micaiahs of today. He wants us to be the John the Baptist of today. And if it means opposing men, we oppose men in order to stand up for the Christ, the Son of God. That's why those stories are there. Not just for biblical literature. In 2020, who did you seek to please? God or man? How about this one? In 2020, were you more concerned about effort, or were you more concerned about comfort? Man has a tendency to be like water. Do you know that? We love the path of what? Least resistance, don't we? Love that. Don't want to fight, don't want to argue, don't want to battle, don't want the hardships. Just follow the path of least resistance. When the panic hit, there were many who opted for what? Home worship, online worship, did they not? Now here's what's interesting. When the pandemic first came out, we were told, we got to get over the curve. We got to get over the curve. We got to flatten the curve. Guess what, folks? We've had the curve flattened for a long time. We have not even had 1 million deaths in the United States of America in the 15 months that the pandemic has been here. Not even 1 million yet. The curve is flattened. But there are many still staying home. And we ask why. And the reason is comfort, don't we? My neighbors across the street on the right to me, they pulled up in the car the other day. I was out working in the yard, and we talked for a minute, and we were talking about the pandemic, of course. And it was getting to be Easter. It was the week before Easter, and they are Episcopalians, and they looked at me and they said, you know, we just haven't been back to worship yet. And they said, you want to know why? I said, why? They said, it's so easy. And I thought, well, there's some honest folk. It's easy, isn't it, to stay home? Oh, we're going to go this Easter Sunday, but I wonder if they just stayed home and watched TV today. You see, it's easy. You don't have to get up and shower, don't have to get dressed. That for some folks is a chore. You know it? It's easy. You can grab you a cup of coffee, grab you a bagel with a little cream cheese, donut, prop your legs up in your lazy boy, just watch the worship. Boy, isn't that nice? You bring a bagel and coffee to church, rather than be all over you. It's easy. You see, you can let the kids just kind of run around the house during worship. You don't have to try to train them. You don't have to try to keep them still. You don't have to keep them quiet whatsoever. That right there was one of the reasons my son and his wife hadn't gone back to worship for a period of time. Kathleen and I visited them on one occasion, and they knew Dad's getting up, Dad's going down to the building. So what do? They got up, dressed, went down to the building with us. First time they've been back since the pandemic had hit. And the thing they told me, it's easy. Sometimes they're little kids, they got 3 of them, 2 little girls and a little boy. They're a little rambunctious. You get them home, go play, get out of here. They were caught up right in the middle of it. What I loved was after we got through with the worship that day, we went to eat somewhere. He saw somebody in the restaurant he was talking to. He said, this first day we've been back to worship in quite some time. And he said, you want to know what? I learned how much I was missing by not being there. He didn't say that to me. He said that to a friend. I just happened to overhear him. See, it got easy for him. See, when you just watch it on TV, you can pause and come back as needed. Can't you? Man, this preacher's getting long-winded. I just turn him off for a while. I'll come back 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon and I'll finish it up. And that's what people do. They just put it on pause. Got to go to the bathroom, think of something you got to get done real fast, just pause him. That's what I got this DVR for anyway. Here's something too. I can do other things while I'm watching worship. Did you hear that? So many people at home don't participate in worship, they watch worship. Folks, worship wasn't designed to be watched, it was designed to be participated in. But people like to watch worship. And they can do a lot of things, can't they? I can cook dinner, I can watch the baby, I can clean the house, I can wash the clothes. Can you imagine? What if all of us were doing that in this auditorium right now? It'd be utter chaos. But individuals would have me to believe it's okay to do that at home. And you can still call it worship. Folks, it's not worship, it's easy. It's what it is. Have you ever considered Jeroboam? He became king of Israel after the kingdom divided. Jeroboam changed a lot of things about worship. He changed the object of worship. He changed the place of worship. He even changed the day of worship as far as the Day of Atonement was concerned. He changed the place of worship from Jerusalem to Dan and Bethel. Do you want to know why? At least what he told the children of Israel, here's what he said. It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem to worship. It's too much. Remember, Jerusalem is high up, 2,600 feet, 2,700 feet above sea level. Can you imagine having to make that trek up that big mountain? They didn't have electric scooters back then. Can you imagine making that trek? So he says, guess what, guys? I got a solution to your problem. It's too much to go up to Jerusalem. Here's Bethel. Here's Dan. One of those is close to you. Just go there. You don't have to make that long, hard trip up to the city of Jerusalem. Wow, it's too much for you. Some feel that it's too much for them to return to the assembly even now. It's just too much. Folks, that reflects on our commitment, doesn't it? It reflects on our commitment. Notice, worship is one of the most easy things that you and I can do. I have to get up, get in my luxury car, and drive to a heated and cooled, carpeted, benches with padded pews, and sit for 2 or 3 hours. Woo! Woo! That is work. Are you kidding, folks? It's the easiest thing you could do. And for some reason, we found how to make the easiest thing you can do even easier. How you do that? I don't know, but we sure did it. Every preacher that I've talked to, two things. Attendance, even though they're back in services, is down. Some almost 50%. And secondly, they don't know whether they're ever going to get those people back. It's sad, isn't it? You want to know why? It's easy. Folks, worship's not about comfort. Worship's not about convenience. Worship is about what? Well, it's not about going through the motions. It's not just about making certain that I watched worship today. I watched it. I tuned in. It's not what it's about, folks. God is a spirit. And they that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. We need to know what David knew when it comes to worship. And he expressed what he knew in 1 Samuel 24:24. He came to the threshing floor of Araunah in order to offer up sacrifices. Araunah told him, here's the sacrifice, here's the wood for the altar, here's the threshing floor, it's yours. Just make sacrifices, David. And look what David says. I will what? I will surely pay it or buy it of thee for a price, he says. Folks, David doesn't want it free. I'm going to buy it for a price. Neither will I offer burnt offerings unto the Lord my God of that which cost me nothing. Folks, worship should cost us something. Worship should involve some effort and labor and toil on our end. It's not about easy. It's about coming and worshiping the Almighty God. In 2020, what did we choose? Did we really choose to serve and worship the Lord, or did we choose comfort? Something easy. We made mention of this in our first lesson. Folks, 2020 was a difficult year. There's no doubt about it. It was tough. We faced some things that we had never experienced before. Brand new things, weren't they? And because of the pandemic, we had choices that we had to make. Choices that truly tested our faithfulness to God, didn't they? Did we choose the great physician or human doctors? Did we choose obedience or excuses? Did we choose to please God or men? Did we choose effort or comfort? As we stated this morning, God knows the answer to those questions in our lives. He knows the answer. My prayer is that what we've been through has taught us some lessons, some major lessons. And yes, maybe we've erred, maybe we've made mistakes, maybe we haven't done exactly the way we need to do. But we learn from that. We'll repent of it and we'll pray God that He'll forgive us. And the next time we have to face a challenge in our lives where we're tested severely, we'll go to His Word and we'll make the choices that God desperately wants us to make. The question of the song is this: have you decided to follow Jesus? If you're not a Christian, you can be this morning. Thousands of Jews were gathered in the city of Jerusalem in Acts chapter 2. They were not prepared for what was about to happen. They were there for a feast, Pentecost, second major feast of the Jews. On that day, the Lord outpoured the Holy Spirit upon the apostles, and they began to preach the gospel for the first time. Many of those Jews were convicted of killing the Christ. They were convicted of not believing in Him as the Son of the living God. Peter said God had made that same Jesus both Lord and Christ. Many of them were convicted. Men and brethren, what shall we do? Here's the steps. Having believed, repent, and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ for the remission of sins. Folks, that's a direct quote from Acts 2:38. That's the same message we're preaching today. Nothing less, nothing more. You do exactly what Peter told those people to do, and guess what? You'll be saved. And they that gladly received His word were baptized. The Bible says, Acts 2:41, and the Lord added to the saved daily, added to the church daily, such as should be saved, Acts 2:47. You need to do that this morning. We want you to. Maybe you're an erring Christian and you need to ask forgiveness. Do you need the prayers of the church? Won't you come as together we stand and sing?